You're tuned in to Philly's #1 college radio station, WHIP.
All right, we're back here, Philly's #1 college radio station, WHIP, on this Wednesday main event. Zach Gelb and Chase Sr. here with you. 215-204-9449 is the number if you want to hop on board with us. The Eagles are in a playoff race. They're going to have a bye week this week, and they have two tough matchups up against two quality playoff teams in the Arizona Cardinals and the Detroit Lions. Nick Foles has been the big story here in the city of brotherly love. And now let's go out to the hotline and welcome in a Pro Football Hall of Fame writer and Comcast SportsNet analyst, and that's Ray Didinger. Ray, it's Zach Gelb and Chase Sr. here at your old stomping grounds at Temple University. How are you?
Doing fine. How are you guys doing?
We're doing great, and we appreciate you giving us a few minutes today. And this has been an Eagles team where a few weeks ago a lot of fans were panicking, and now all of a sudden they find themselves as the favorites in the NFC East as that lead dog. And what the fans have to be impressed the most with has been the quarterback play of one Nick Foles. After that Dallas Cowboys game, he's really stepped up his game, and he's looking remarkable for the Eagles under center.
He's playing great. He really is. I mean, he's doing everything. You know, he's doing everything at an extremely high level, and you can just kind of see him growing in confidence every week, and you can see the confidence of the guys around him growing by the week. It's very encouraging. I mean, last week was a really good, solid win for this team, and you know, when you look at it, you just got the feeling watching the game on Sunday, watching the game play out on Sunday, and then watching the tape again on Monday. You just kind of saw a lot of things starting to come together. You kind of saw Chip Kelly's play calling becoming, you know, really kind of crisp and decisive. A lot of new things being worked into the offense. Some things that were giving this offense trouble a few weeks ago. It kind of looks like Chip and Pat Shurmur have figured them out, and they've got a counterpunch for some of the things that were bothering them during that stretch where they were having trouble scoring. You know, the defense really just seems to keep getting better and better by the week. The special teams have been solid. I mean, they're taking on the look of a I don't want to say a complete football team, but a pretty solid football team. And right now, you know, solid looks in the rather pallid company of the NFC East. You know, a solid team looks pretty good.
You talked about the struggles that they had on the offensive side of the ball. The two games that really stand out to me was when they went up against the Cowboys and the Giants, and they were only able to put up a combined 10 points. I know this is Kelly's first year. He comes over from the college ranks. People were calling his offense revolutionary, and I don't believe it's revolutionary, but I do think he's an excellent play caller. Do you just see him getting more comfortable throughout the course of the season as a first-year head coach?
Well, I think he's kind of figuring some things out. You know, when he came in, I mean, he did try to incorporate a lot of his Oregon principles into this offense, and he tried to do it with Mike Vick, who was obviously a far more mobile quarterback than Nick Foles. And you know, I mean, there were some bumps in it. I mean, he had to kind of figure out how he was going to adjust his game to the bigger, faster, more physical defenses of the NFL. And once Mike Vick got hurt, and he moved to Nick Foles, he then had to figure out, okay, how am I going to adjust this to a quarterback who doesn't have the mobility of some of the quarterbacks I had in college? It certainly doesn't have the mobility of Mike Vick. And he's sort of done that. I mean, in the last couple of weeks, I mean, the things that I have seen change is he has allowed Nick Foles to run the read option. And not that Nick is ever going to be a guy that's going to be able to break those plays for 40 yards like a Mike Vick or a Colin Kaepernick. But if Foles can just take him half a dozen of those plays a game, you know, and get 7, 8, 9 yards, pick up a few first downs, move the chains, that's really all you need to do because, you know, then the defense has to play honestly, and that means that they can't collapse the defense on the running back, which is what they were doing for a few weeks. When the quarterback was not a running threat, they were just teeing off on the running back, and that was what took, you know, really limited Shady McCoy's opportunities. But now that they've got the running game kind of moving a little bit, and they've got Nick Foles working the edges a little bit, it's opened more opportunities up for Shady McCoy, and really that's, you know, he's the best player on this offense, if not the best player on the whole team. So, I mean, he really has to kind of be the focal point of what they need to establish week after week.
Ray Didinger joins us on the hotline, Philly's #1 college radio station, WHIP. This is the main event with Zach Gelb and Chase Sr. Ray, it's Chase. The numbers speak for themselves. 16 touchdowns, no interceptions, 2 touchdowns on the ground. Foles has the best QB rating in the NFL. But what does he have to do to convince you and the Eagles brass that he can be the Eagles quarterback of the future?
Consistency. I mean, we've seen him be very good, and we've seen him be very bad. I think he just has to play out the rest of this year and sort of establish the fact that, no, this is what he is. I mean, right now we've seen the best of him and we've seen the worst of him, and I think everybody's waiting back to decide, okay, what's the real Nick Foles? And I don't think anybody expects him to play at this level indefinitely. I mean, nobody has. I mean, Tom Brady, Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, none of them have played the way this guy has played for 3 weeks now. And I don't think anybody expects that to continue through the end, uninterrupted till the end of the season. I mean, this will all kind of level off. But I think that's why he really has to be. And even though Chip has not yet come out and declared he's the quarterback, he's still sort of hedging and not committing. But the reality is, I mean, everybody knows that he's the guy, and he has to be the guy the rest of this year, unless he's injured. I mean, he has to take every snap for the rest of this season. Number one, because he's playing so well, but number two, because you really need all of that time to determine what he really is. I mean, Mike Vick is clearly not the future of this team. Nick Foles may be. So for what remains of this season, the regular season, and who knows, maybe even a postseason, Nick Foles has to play the rest of the way so that you know exactly what you've got at quarterback, and then make the decisions you need to make in the offseason about whether you're actually going to go out and draft another quarterback or if you feel like you've already got your quarterback in-house.
Football is exciting again here in Philadelphia. It's been a while since we can say that, and the Eagles are really playing well in all phases of the game. How impressed and surprised are you that Chip Kelly was able to come in here, basically change the culture overnight, and that the Eagles have really bought into this magnitude so far?
Well, they're sort of ahead of my expectations. I mean, I thought coming into the season, everybody was always asking how many wins, and I said I thought they would be 6-10. Well, I mean, they're already well on the way to surpassing that. I would be surprised if they didn't. At this point, it'd be a major disappointment if they did. So, yeah, I mean, they're ahead of where I thought they were going to be. Because, I mean, I have seen college coaches, guys with no NFL experience, try to do what Chip Kelly's doing this year, and even some really good coaches had difficulty. I mean, there is definitely a learning curve to what you need to do. The pro game is different than the college game, and even smart coaches and even really good coaches sometimes takes a little while to make that transition. Kelly has done very well, and I think one of the things that favored him and continues to favor him is that the game is kind of trending in his direction anyway. He's not a college coach who came out of the college system, won a lot of college games with a system that didn't apply to the NFL, where, let's say, he won a whole bunch of games in college running the wishbone, or he won a whole lot of games in college running a different kind of an offense, and he came to the NFL and had to do things entirely differently. Those are the guys that you can really understand struggling. But the fact is that the NFL, you look around the league for the last couple of years, they've been doing a lot of the same things that Chip Kelly was doing to win in Oregon. So, he comes in here, and, I mean, not everything is transferable, but an awful lot of it is transferable. And so I think that gave him, a real running start on being able to pick up the NFL game and move forward. And that's what he's done. And I see, and I especially saw this last week against Washington, I really saw his play calling really evolving more and more as he's really getting a feel for the pace of the NFL game, the NFL athletes. I think his play calling is now sort of getting better as it goes along, and he's developing, I think, even more confidence in his quarterback and vice versa. The players, you used the term buying in. The players have. I mean, they have really bought into Chip's program, and that's what has to happen for a team to win. If the players don't buy in, then you're not going to be successful. Once they buy in, there's no guarantee, but at least at that point you have a chance.
A few more questions with Ray Didinger as the Pro Football Hall of Fame writer and Comcast SportsNet analyst joins us here on WHIP Radio in Philadelphia. And Ray, what's really impressed me so far has been the two wide receivers in Riley Cooper and Deshaun Jackson. They've elevated their games and are both on pace to have career years ever since they made the change from Michael Vick to Nick Foles. Since Nick Foles has been implemented as the starter, what have you seen change out of both Cooper and Jackson to really elevate their game to the next level?
With Jackson, not so much. I mean, Jackson kind of is what he is. I mean, as long as he stays healthy, he's going to produce. So that hasn't changed. What really has changed is the night and day difference in Riley Cooper's production from when Mike Vick was the quarterback to when Nick Foles became the quarterback. I mean, you almost can't talk about Nick Foles' success without talking about Riley Cooper. I mean, the two of them have really prospered together. And I think there's just you see this sometimes with quarterbacks and receivers. There's just a real sort of chemistry and a feel that guys develop for each other, where they develop the quarterback has confidence in that receiver, he has confidence in how he runs his routes. They just have an intuitive kind of timing that he can read his body language. He knows exactly when he's going into his break, when he's coming out of his break, where he's going to be when I throw the ball. I mean, the one touchdown pass he threw a couple weeks ago against Green Bay, where he just sort of laid it up in the middle of the field, and Cooper came back and made the tumbling catch. A lot of people said, "Oh, well, that was luck." No, it wasn't really. I mean, it was just a feel that I know where he's going to be, and I'm just going to put it out there and let him go get it. That's the kind of, I don't want to say ESP, but that's the kind of wavelength that they're working on. If the quarterback knows exactly where the receiver's going to be, the receiver knows exactly when and where to look for the football. And, as Nick Foles is gaining confidence, I think you're seeing Riley Cooper gain confidence. And what's really interesting is early in the season, the only kind of coverage Riley could beat was zone coverage. If you zoned him, he was making plays. If you played a man press, he couldn't get off it. Well, now in the last couple of weeks, teams have tried to play press coverage on him, and he's been able to still be successful. So now that he's developed that part of his game and he's successful getting off the line and beating man coverage, I would expect that he's going to continue to produce at a pretty good level.
Let's get to the defense now. Through the first 4 weeks of the season, Billy Davis wasn't the most popular figure here in Philadelphia, to be nice, but ever since after that Broncos game where they allowed 52 points, this is a unit that's continued to improve each week. What adjustments have you seen out of Billy Davis in his first year here with the Eagles as a defensive coordinator?
Well, I think he knows his personnel better. I mean, you got to figure he was coming in from somewhere else and bringing in a new system, and he was inheriting a lot of guys that he didn't know. And didn't know him. And I think after the Denver game, after they just got torn apart in Denver, and Bill had that press conference that week where we said, "Look, just trust me." And people kind of laughed and sort of like, "Well, why should we trust? Based on what we've seen so far, why should we trust you?" But I understood what he was saying. What he was saying was, "Look, it's going to take me a little while to figure this out now. I mean, I got a bunch of players now that I think I know what they can do, but from week to week, I'm learning, no, that isn't what they can do. They can do this better." And so from week to week, he's been tweaking stuff. He's been changing things. He's been putting in new blitz packages. He's been moving guys around in the defense and put them in positions now where they can play to their strength. The players have learned the system now, so they're playing faster and with more confidence. I mean, you see more guys get into the football now because they're just playing faster. And that's the key to any defense. The decision to release Isaac Sepawaga was, a lot of people kind of like, who cares? But I think that was really kind of significant because, I mean, he was giving them nothing inside a defensive tackle. They were losing battles in there all the time. And as a result, the inside blockers were getting to the second level, and they were wiping out Kendricks and Ryans. Once they got rid of Sepawaga and they began putting Benny Logan in there and moved Cedric Thornton down some and began giving Squares some snaps, now all of a sudden you got good, active, aggressive young guys playing over the football. And now those blockers, they have to account for those guys, and they have to double team some of those guys. And you got a couple blockers now that are tying up on Logan. Well, those are two less blockers that are getting to D'Amico Ryans, and you see how well Ryans is playing. I mean, that's just one example, but across the board, I think Davis has developed a better feel for his players. He knows what they can do, and now from week to week, he's putting them in positions where they can do what they do best. And as a result, you see this defense is really, really playing well. They're giving up yards, but they're not giving up points, and they're getting the takeaways, and that's really the key to winning in the NFL.
Ray, when Jim Johnson was hired in 1999, he didn't really have all that impressive of a resume. The same can be said for Billy Davis after coming over from Cleveland. Are you seeing a little bit of a similarity there between the mentality of Davis and Johnson and the type of identity that this defense is trying to establish?
Well, I would take issue a little bit with your point about Jim Johnson. Jim had been around the league for a good while, and even though he hadn't been on teams that had won a lot, he was highly regarded in football circles. I mean, in a lot of teams, he went to teams that had very poor defensive personnel, and Jim did the best he could with what he was handed. But I think everybody around the league, to a man, knew that he was a tough coordinator to game plan against because he was so aggressive. And he squeezed the maximum out of what he was given in all of those places. And when Andy Reid hired Jim Johnson, and that was one of his first hires, I talked to a lot of people around the league, and to a man, every one of them said, hey, Andy got himself a really good defensive coordinator. The statistics didn't show it, and Jim didn't have a big public profile. I don't think the fans knew who he was. But within the NFL, people knew who he was. So once he got to Philadelphia, and all of a sudden he had Brian Dawkins, and he had Jeremiah Trotter, and he had Hugh Douglas, and all of a sudden he had some players, then all of a sudden everything began kicking in. So that's a little bit of a different situation. I think, Davis is coming in here similarly. Didn't have great stats and had been in a couple situations where the defense had not been very good in other places. But the people around the league thought that he was a good schemer and a good play caller. And I think what you're seeing now, the thing that I really like is I think he's done a good job developing some of these young players. Logan has really come on. Seth Thornton, who was a practice squad player here last year, has really come on. That's the coaching is part of it, the game planning and the play calling is part of it. But another big part of being a successful coach is developing players and developing the talent you have and taking those guys and making them better. And I think that Davis and his defensive staff are doing that with a lot of these guys. Fletcher Cox is a really talented guy. He's a first-round pick and should be playing at a high level, but he wasn't earlier this season. But you see that they've changed his assignments now. They're giving him a little more freedom. They're moving him inside. They're not playing him as much as a 3-4 end. They're moving him back to more of a 3 technique inside, which is what he does well. And now you see, week by week, he's just playing much, much better. And, last week he looked like a dominant defensive player against Washington.
Final one here with Ray Didinger right before we let him run. We all know the Eagles haven't been that great at home, only one win on the year, and that came last week up against the Redskins. Now you have a bye week, and then you welcome in a former Temple coach in Bruce Arians, the Cardinals, and then you welcome in Megatron the week after that with the Detroit Lions. Do they have to go 1-1? Do they have to go 2-0 to kind of put this home drought behind them, or do you think this is going to be some big wins upcoming for the Eagles in the next 2 weeks?
Well, having said how good I think they're playing, and they are, I think it's going to be real hard to win those 2 games. I think if they get 1-1 out of those 2 games, they'll have done well. People don't. I don't know if people here in Philadelphia are paying close enough attention to see how well Arizona is playing right now. Arizona is every bit as much in the playoff race right now as the Eagles are, and they've won 3 in a row, and their defense is very good, especially the run defense. On offense, they don't run the ball very well, and Carson Palmer can be up and down, but they have great receivers, so they're dangerous. And we know the Eagles' recent history against the Cardinals has not been very good. So, this sounds a little crazy, but I honestly think that one of the real dangers that this team has right now is it could be overconfidence. Now they're over 500, they're in first place, they finally won a home game. They've had 2 weeks, they'll have had 2 weeks now to listen to everybody tell them how great they are. I just wonder where their heads are going to be when they come back home to play the Arizona Cardinals. If they're not ready to play, if they somehow look past the Cardinals and don't think they're that good, they could get bushwhacked there. They're really going to have to focus. The Lions, I think you will get ready for the Lions because you know what Stafford and Johnson and Bush and those guys can do. They can light you up. That's a team that'll get your attention. The Arizona Cardinals, I think, I just wonder. The Eagles have to be ready to play that game. They don't want to, now that they finally won a home game, they don't want to come out and lay an egg against the Arizona Cardinals and fall back to 6-6. They kind of got this thing rolling, and they got to keep it rolling. But I'm going to tell you, the next 2 games are not going to be easy.
Ray, we appreciate a few minutes today. Thanks so much, and let's talk to you again soon down the road.
Hey, it was my pleasure. Take care, guys. Have a good day.
Thanks, Ray.
Bye-bye.
Ray Didinger right there, Pro Football Hall of Fame writer, now Comcast Sports Analyst as well. Philly's #1 college radio station, WHIP.